So it's fair to assume that you did not hear any of the conversations between the officers, correct?
Tower didn't let me get close enough. Correct.
Correct. The question is, did you hear any of the conversations between the officers? Yes or no?
Please repeat that because you said it different the first time.
Sure. Did you hear any of the conversation occurring between the three officers with Mr. Floyd? Yes or no?
No.
It's fair to say that as you were there, you grew angrier.
Correct. That's what you perceive.
Pardon?
Is that what you took from the video, correct?
Right. As you were there and interacting with Officer Tao and Officer Chauvin, you grew more and more upset. Would you agree with that?
Correct.
You grew angry, right?
I grew control and professionalism.
Okay. Again, you made a statement to Agents Garvey and Eckert and in that statement you said,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this form of cross-examination.
Overruled.
Which one, Your Honor?
Overruled.
Proceed.
in that statement you said, like, I really wanted to beat the shit out of the police officers.
Mhm.
You said that.
Yeah, I did. That's what I felt.
You were angry.
No, you can't paint me out as angry. I was in a position where I had to be controlled, of control professionalism. I wasn't angry because I
I'm
stayed
going
on
to
the curb.
object as non-responsive.
Well, I'm objecting.
Overruled. Overruled.
Answer will stand.
Next question.
Thank you. You started calling them names. Yes?
Yeah, you heard that. Yeah, you heard the
Right?
video.
You call him a tough guy, right?
You watched the video.
You call him a real man, right?
You watched the video.
Okay.
You do have to answer the question yes or no based on what he's asking.
I'm going to ask you that again, so your answers should be yes or no, okay?
Yes,
You called him a tough guy.
I did.
You called him a real man.
I did.
You called him such a man.
I did.
You called him bogus.
I did.
You called him a bum at least 13 times.
That's what you counted in the video,
That's what I counted.
and that's what you got, 13.
And that was early on, right? Those terms grew more and more angry. Would you agree with that?
They grew more and more pleading for life.
All right. After you called him a bum 13 times, you called him a fucking bum.
That's what you heard?
Did you say that?
Is that what you heard?
I'm asking you, sir.
I'm pretty
Did
sure
you
I
say
did.
that?
You heard that. I'm pretty sure you did.
You call him a fucking pussy ass bitch.
If that's what you heard, I'm sure that's
I'm
what I did.
asking you, did you say that?
If that's what the video recorded, that's what I did.
You called him a bitch.
If that's the video you heard from the video,
It's
that's
a
what I
yes or
did.
no, sir.
If that's what was heard on the video, yes, I did.
And at one point, you said that Officer Tao pushed you.
That's correct. He didn't. He put his hand in my chest, is what I said.
And you observed Officer Tao push someone else, right? Or feel like he pushed someone else.
I didn't let him touch anyone else.
Do you recall saying, I dare you to touch me like that. I swear I'll slap the fuck out of both of you.
Yeah, I did. I meant it.
So again, sir, it's fair to say that you grew angrier and angrier.
No, I grew professional and professional, and I stayed in my body. You can't paint me out to be angry.
You were not standing, you were walking around, right?
Correct. Control.
And at times, you would go forward towards where Officer Chauvin was, right?
Correct.
And at times you'd walk to the side, correct?
Well, I didn't really get too close to Officer Chauvin, actually. Tao did not allow me to get close to Officer Chauvin.
You
So,
attempted to walk closer
I stepped off the curb and I stepped back on the curb.
because Officer Tao didn't permit you to go forward.
He said, step back on the curb.
Your voice, right? You weren't just saying you're a bum. Would you agree with that?
You said I wasn't just saying.
Right.
He was
The
a bum.
tone of your voice.
Tone of my voice was loud so people could hear me,
And it grew louder and louder.
so I could be heard.
And after Mr. Floyd was taken by the ambulance, you continued to interact with Officer Tao as well as other people on the scene, correct?
That's correct. After they retreated, I know they had to retreat. I said what I said. I know they can say more to me.
And you continued to yell these types of things after Mr. Floyd was gone, right?
Me and Mr. Tao had words back and forth. Correct.
And I think you said something about hoping he would shoot himself.
No, I didn't say I hope he's going to shoot himself. I said within the next 2 years, you will shoot yourself in your head for what you did. I didn't say hope. I don't hope death on anyone. The Bible doesn't allow that.
So again, you continued to engage with these officers, right?
Tao,
And your voice was loud, right?
yeah, he tried to intimidate me. So
The officers, most of the officers were on the other side of 38th Street.
me and Tao was standing in front of each other.
At one point, Officer Tao goes across the street as well, right?
They both had to retreat. Correct.
And you continued to yell these same types of things.
Probably would. Correct. Yeah. Wasn't being heard.
And it was over and over and over and over again, right?
Because I wasn't being heard.
It's a yes or no question, sir. Was it over and over and over again?
Yes, because I wasn't being heard.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I have a few more questions for you.
Yes, sir.
In MMA fighting, do you ever have a situation where your opponent is handcuffed behind the back?
Never.
Do you ever have a situation in MMA where there are 3 people fighting against 1?
Never.
And when you were on the scene at 38th in Chicago on May 25th of last year, when you were watching this interaction between these 4 Minneapolis police officers and Mr. Floyd, were you watching a cage match at the time?
Well, I only seen 2 of them, the animals. So I was watching more of a humane shit show.
Okay.
Objection, Your Honor. This is Dave.
And
Sorry about what you said.
That's okay.
Okay.
so you weren't watching a sport that day, were you?
Not at all.
Mr. Nelson asked you a couple times about this kind of blood choke around the throat. Based on your doing this yourself, can you apply a blood choke to one side of the neck?
Correct.
And is that done in mixed martial arts?
That is done. Correct.
So whether Mr. Nelson wants to ask you about doing it on both sides of the neck, you've seen it done on one side of the neck.
Correct.
And when you were on the street there at 38th in Chicago on May 25th of last year, watching Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd, Was it that kind of blood choke you thought you were seeing on one side of the neck?
Objection to
That is correct.
Overruled.
Mr. Nelson asked you about seeing times when somebody has been unconscious in a mixed martial arts fight and come to and try to wrestle again or fight again. When an opponent is rendered unconscious through something like a chokehold in a mixed martial arts fight, is the fight stopped?
Right away, immediately, medical attention, right away.
Mr. Nelson asked you about dealing with crowds that are upset in your experience as a security guard. When you're dealing with a crowd that is upset, are there ways to try and de-escalate the situation without using force?
That is correct.
Like what kinds of things can you do?
Really staying calm, being humane, talking to the person, trying to talk them down, just getting the person away from the situation, just being humane with the person. What worked for me in downtown Minneapolis as a security guard and with drunk people that I'm babysitting pretty much. Like I have to come to and try to figure out a way how to solve this problem without putting physical force to them unless they are trying to physically enforce on me.
So while you were on the street there on 38th in Chicago on May 25th of last year and watching Mr. Chauvin hold Mr. Floyd down, did you see Officer Tao try to de-escalate that situation at all with the crowd?
Objection calls for legal conclusion. Sustained.
Well, based on your training and experience as a security guard and your testimony just now about ways to de-escalate the situation, did you see Tao doing anything like that while you were there on that scene?
Same objection.
Sustained. Sidebar. Mr. Frank.
When you're dealing with a crowd as a security guard,
Objection.
Overruled. He hasn't finished the question.
and you have, as Mr. Nelson described them, a crowd that's upset, would it help in your situation as a security guard to have other security guards present?
Yes, it does. More presence, the better.
Move on, Mr. Frank.
During your cross-examination, you were asked about the time that Officer Tao touched you, put his hand on your chest.
Correct.
And your reaction was what?
Immediately swiped his hand because I felt threatened, and then I stepped back and I put my hands forward, and I really was threatened by his presence. So again, I put my hands up, didn't know what else was going to move forward, and I proceeded to step back.
So,
I know you backed up to demonstrate, but if you could move back up.
Oh, sorry, yep.
Oh, no problem. I think we heard you, so you're fine.
just got to stay close to the microphone. So you didn't want Officer Tao touching you,
Not at all.
and other than pushing his hand away, you didn't touch him.
Not at all. We kind of just,
And then you went back up on the curb.
that is correct.
During your cross-examination, you used the term the officer's retreat.
Correct.
What did you mean by that retreat?
What I mean is I'm not a law enforcement or by any means, but I know I see when certain cases happen when it comes to certain things like this, most of the officers retreat away from the scene until all the right authorities come on scene to take care of everything. And that's what I noticed that they did. They retreated away from the scene to the other side of the street, and that's where they stayed until whoever came and deal with them.
Okay. Also, during your cross-examination, Mr. Nelson asked you about things that happened before you got to the scene.
That's correct.
You weren't at all trying to tell the jury in your previous testimony that you knew things that occurred before you got there.
Nah, not at all. I was deer in the headlights.
But when you got there, for that time period after you arrived and saw Mr. Chauvin with his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck on the ground there, until the ambulance took him, you watched that entire time.
I watched. Yeah, I watched everything.
And so during that time that you were watching, did you see anything that you thought justified holding Mr. Floyd down that way?
No, at all.
Sustained.
Answer is stricken.
Did you see Mr. Floyd fighting back to the officers?
No,
Did you see whether Mr. Floyd lost consciousness while you were there watching?
correct.
Your Honor,
Yep. No argument on objections. I'll ask for sidebar if I want objection, or if I want argument. The objection is overruled. You may proceed. Ask the question again so Mr. Williams knows what it is.
while you were there watching, was there a time when you saw Mr. Floyd lose consciousness?
That is correct. We are referred to the fish.
That's-
Yeah.
You were asked multiple times about being angry
That's correct.
and more upset as time went on.
Correct.
So why? Why did you get angry and more upset as time went on?
Because again, they were not listening to anything that I was telling them. I felt like I had to speak out for Floyd because he was speaking out to the officer, and there was no feedback, no emotion, no nothing. Like I literally looked in his eyes and had, as I'm talking to
What,
him.
I mean, I'll just
Yeah.
stop you there.
We're gonna stop the answer there. Next question.
What did you think was happening to Mr. Floyd?
He was under distress.
That answer will stand, but move on from that.
You felt he was in danger?
Correct.
In danger of what?
Counsel sidebar. Mr. Fair.
So, Mr. Williams, why did you think it was so important that you were not being heard?
Because I felt like with the side choke, you lose consciousness, and I felt like he was in the process of losing consciousness, also from the condition of my fish in the bag.
So
So,
Is it overruled?
you can continue.
so like I said before earlier, he reminded me of my fish in the bag.
So let me ask it this way then.
The last no will be stricken about the fish in the bag.
And so then, I'm sorry, Your Honor. So you were concerned about Mr. Floyd losing his life?
Correct.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
Very brief.
You were asked a series of questions on redirect about your experience in mixed martial arts, if you recall.
Correct.
Can you tell me about any of the conversations that you had as you were being rendered unconscious in any of your fights?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. You're saying.
What did you just ask me?
No,
What did you just ask?
just wait. Let me rule on the objection first. The objection is overruled. You may answer if you have a recollection as to any time. Ask the question again.